My name is Alicia. I am a stereographer. I'm a longtime stereographer. I've been a stereographer for over half my life, for about 24 years, and I also happen to be a dye sublimation printer. Just a very quick little review. I do digital dye sublimation prints, and I make things like stereo cards. Everything I make, though, is on specialty materials. I cannot print on paper. I can make stereo cards in a multiple range of sizes, on different materials. I do other types of stereo printing, like anaglyph prints. Oh, excuse me, this is upside down. This one is by David Hazan. This is on a nice piece of glass. And I also am experimenting with basically transparencies. I make stereo realist digital transparencies. I'll get into that later. And just before I start, if you are interested in contacting me for any reason, um, I'm going to be providing scanning services and printing services, and many more. I am the last stereographer at gmail.com, and I apologize for this being like that, but I actually have to write everything backwards. This is taken on this face cam, so everything is backwards right now, just so everybody knows. But there is a huge resurgence in in film photography in general. There are there are photo labs popping up like within the past 2 years. I think I've seen 20 in New York City. Just keep on popping up out of nowhere, and this is something that is not really translating very well into stereo film photography. And I see a lot of blogs. I see a lot of like YouTube videos and stuff like that. All of a sudden, trying to really advocate, I guess, or at least explain how like cameras work, how stereo film cameras work, and how to operate them, and et cetera, et cetera. And that is not what stereo photography is about. Stereo photography is I'm a stereographer. I study all sorts of manners and means and methods of communicate and techniques and technologies that basically result in stereoscopic communication. Stereo communication is an end user first top down method of approach, meaning no matter what you do, it is still going to be entirely reliant on your end user, your viewer, to be able to view the stereo images that you are trying to create, and basically have them translated to the viewer with perceivable depth. That is basically the whole entire point of this, is that you're adding the element of perceivable depth to all the other elements involved in a visual image, like color, like shape, form, light and dark, all those other elements. It's basically another element to your palette, but unfortunately, I see a lot of like trying to basically push this stereo photography, stereo film photography specifically, onto new adopters, onto a new generation of stereo film photographers, and it's really not ending up in more stereo film photography actually being created to result in something that could be viewed by another viewer. And I'm going to tell you why for a second, but like before I even like do that, I'm going to just like show you examples, because one of the things that I also see is a lot of people flexing their camera skills. So like I'm gonna do like a little test, right? So I'm gonna just show you two cameras at a time, and right, which one of these cameras can you take your take your photographs, get your film processed, get the film scanned, and result in photographic prints? This camera or this camera, right? I'm not even going to tell you what they are yet. Can you get your film scanned, processed, scanned, and result in prints if you're using this camera, or let's say this camera, right? Can you get your, et cetera, et cetera? Same question. Can you get your film processed, scanned, and result in a set of prints from this camera, the most ubiquitous, the stereo realist, or this, I'm going to say this pair of cameras, right? 1, 2, 1, 2. there's an answer to all of these. Can I possibly get my film scanned and processed and result in prints from, let's say, this camera or this camera? These are all things that a stereo photographer really needs to know, especially if you want to really, and this is, I'm only bringing this up because I see a lot of, just by looking on the internet and just looking in like message boards and stuff like that, uh, people are really interested in making stereo cards, which were always traditionally made with photographic prints. These are a set of photographic prints that were cut out and mounted onto a stereo card for viewing in a traditional stereoscope, right? And I want to say that this has a resurgence of popularity, mainly because this is the main format that the London Stereoscopic Company touts. They're very much into their stereo card collection, and they want to repopularize it. And this is something that, and by the way, this is the format that I personally print, is the traditional 7 by 3.5 inch stereo card, which holds up under magnification. And that's a very specific point that really needs to be communicated, is that a lot of people will try this at home and get results that, like, you know, you could print it on your home printer, but you might see under magnification that the printing elements, like, you know, the artifacts of actual printing, like, you know, like basically, like, even if you have like one of the best, unless you're one of the best printers and you know how to, like, you know, like adjust your print settings and to make a stereo card where there are no dots that are perceptible in it, that's really what people are trying to end up with the end result in. And the fact of the matter is, it's nearly impossible nowadays because of a lot of factors. Excuse me. So I'm here right now to discuss really the main factors that are involved in stereo photography if you want to actually result in acquiring a actual photographic print that will allow you to cut them out and mount them, and have, and, like, you know, like, cut them out and mount yourself a traditional 7 by 3.5 inch stereo card. Now, if you look at my other videos, I really only tend to do videos on mounting chrome film onto what is a stereo slide. And there's a reason for this. The reason for this is that labs, not only modern day labs, I think labs in general, never ever offered prints from stereo realist or the realist size 5 perf format. And so these are things that you really have to kind of know, that nobody's really kind of really touching on, is that there's different elements of formatting that go through the process from the size film that you use. So I'm going to write this, and I'm going to hope that it will translate backwards, because I don't feel like writing it backwards right now. So 35 millimeter film, right? That's a format of film. A 35 millimeter roll of film is a regular, like, 35 millimeter canister. And then there's 120 film, which would be a medium format camera, right? So those are the first two things that you're going to be needing to take into consideration. Whether you're using a 35 millimeter camera to photograph your, or stereo photograph your subject matter, and if you're using a 120 film format. And I'll just show you the difference. Actually, I'm not going to show you that yet. Let me tell you more about the formatting. So that's the first thing into consideration, whether you're shooting with a 120 camera or a 35 millimeter camera. More than often, you're going to be shooting with a 35 millimeter camera, and the most ubiquitous types of 35 millimeter cameras that are specifically made for stereo shooting are the 35 millimeter stereo cameras that came out in the late 40s, throughout the 50s until the 60s, and even to the 70s, I'm going to say. And those are all 5 perf formats. those are basically named after the stereo realist camera. They're called realist format. They are not half frame format. I've seen a very popular blog from London Stereoscopic that actually touts the 5 per format cameras as being half frames, and that is an absolute just blatant like ignorant statement. These are not half frame cameras. These are 5 perf cameras. A half frame would be a 4 perf camera, which would be something like this. This is a half frame camera. This would only take half frame shots. I actually don't even know if I could get film processed and scanned and made into prints from this camera, because it has a very wide in between frame size. It's almost a half a perf wide, and those things are taken very much into consideration when you're developing your film, and not developing your film, but when you're attempting to get your film scanned. Let's say if you want to digitize it and, like, you know, make like a wiggle gif or something like that, or at least have a digital record of it, is because traditional equipment for photo finishing, for photo processing, really did not include odd sizes. So when you're shooting with cameras like this, when you're shooting with cameras like this, this is a half frame camera, by the way, and this will not result in you getting any scan or any print. And so all these cameras that I'm showing you, like, I just showed you a huge bunch of cameras, and, like, you know, like, perhaps you don't know what they are, perhaps you do know what they are, but perhaps you don't know that you will not be able to get your film scanned because they have a specific type of machine that will cut the film at specific lengths for them to get scanned in modern day scanners. And most of these sizes, most of these cameras make the you know, they will photograph onto the film strip in odd sizes that will result in them getting cut off at some sort of point, and therefore they will not be able to print your film in the traditional, like, you know, 3x5 or 4x6 or whatever size that you're going to get done, and or that you want done. And basically you are going to need, as a stereo photographer, additional equipment that unless somebody provides it, and I specifically will provide services that are for scanning, for printing, but only digital printing. I'm not going to be doing photographic processes at all, and resulting in you being able to have these prints made that you want, these photographic prints that you think you're going to cut and you're going to make your own stereo cards. And the reality of it is that you're not. You're going to need to invest at least in a scanner. You're going to invest time into learning how to scan film. You're going to need to learn how to, like, you know, basically, like, you know, do all the, like, techniques that that scanners and like, you know, like, basically, like, photo editors need to do in their post editing workflow. And you're going to need to be able to either have a digital printer such as myself, or you yourself learn the things that I've learned over, like, a 25-year career. And otherwise, you're going to need to know how to mount slides from specifically a type of film that's called chrome film, which results in a positive image. I'll try to show you very quickly. Oh, let's see. Okay, so that would be a negative. This is just regular print film. Sorry, but you could see that this is in a negative, right? And something that would result in a positive image, which is real color. And let's see if so you can see the difference. I want to say just by me doing this is like a regular, what you would normally, like, you know, it's regular color, just as myself. It's not a negative, and so this is called chrome film. This is a 35 millimeter. I have no idea what film this is right now, but I'm going to say it's Actichrome, right? These are things that are not being communicated to people. What is being communicated to, basically, like, you know, the general public right now is that you could just, like, shoot your stereo realist camera or whatever sort of 35 millimeter camera that was made in the late 40s to the, like, early 60s or something like that, and that it would result in you being able to get them scanned, get photos developed. And the reality is you cannot. The only thing that you could really do with any of these cameras is to make a stereo slide. And stereo slides don't even have to be only in 35 millimeter. You can absolutely get them done in basically, like a medium format, and the medium format would be 120. And these are things that still require you to cut out the film, get your mounts, mount them by hand, take them closed, and make, like, a stereo slide format. And these are things that are not being communicated to people. So this is the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is, first of all, even back in the day when, like the stereo realist came out, stereo realist basically was a proponent of really popularizing Kodachrome film. That's when it's even in the stereo realist history, like Seton Rockwhite, like he knew that Kodachrome was coming out, and he just was like, why isn't anybody making a stereo camera, and et cetera, et cetera. Ipso facto, any film processing place that had a contract with Kodachrome or with Kodak to process Kodachrome film that was in the 5-perf format, which was in the stereo realist format. And throughout that time, throughout the late 40s to the early 60s or whatever, all 5-perf format cameras that were getting film processed at these photo finishing places that had contracts with Kodak, 5-perf format films were not allowed to be made into photographic prints. They were only allowed to be either delivered back to you as an uncut strip of film that you would hand mount yourself, or they would actually make you these stereo slides, and they would mount them themselves, and they would return to you a full-on stereo slide that was only delivered back to you not only in Kodachrome film, but basically you did not have the option of making a stereo or a photographic print from these. There were specific contracts for that. If you were found out if you were a lab and you were found out to be making photographic prints, actual photo prints of 5-perf format film of any type, Kodak would cancel their contract with you, and you would basically lose your business. There were no negative carriers made for 5-perf format film back then. Only very here and there independent photo labs were actually making and delivering back to a customer any sort of photo, processed finished photo that was a 5-perf format to make a stereo card. So the stereo card basically ended at the introduction of these 5-perf format, realist format cameras, and they were made basically to only make stereo slides. I've done other videos, and please look at my other videos for any information about mounting stereo slides, etc. But every type of format, these are all types of different formats. That one is actually for projection, but wide, you could get full frame, half frame, 5-perf, of course, any type of format. Basically, if it was a 35 millimeter roll and it had a 5-perf image on it, you were not allowed to make a photographic print from them. That was a contract issue. Kodak eventually got taken to court and lost in an antitrust case, not only for demanding that that photo finishing places really relied on their own chemistry and would only basically record anything and process anything in the slide formats for Kodachrome, etc. like that. I think it also had to do with the fact that they were not allowed to make photographic prints from 5-perf frame rolls of film. This is something that nobody really mentions. So the resurgence in popularity of basically film photography that's just exploding all over the earth right now, and the inability to get your film processed at these odd sizes, these 5 perf sizes, perhaps these half frame sizes, but with like 3 or 4 frames at a time, or anything like this, basically has roots in the fact that these were odd sizes, and photo places really didn't have the equipment to process anything like that, because the only cameras that were using these types of very odd frame sizes were stereo cameras. And stereo cameras have always traditionally, since the stereo realist and throughout the stereo boom that happened in the mid-century, and in the late 40s to the early 60s, or if you want to say the 70s, that's fine. They also did not have the equipment to process this frame format, or all these types of frame formats, into photographic prints, because Kodak did not let them. This was like, a law of Kodak. This was illegal in Kodak. And in order for, and if you did it, if you were happened to, like, have been found out and caught, they would come and they would take away your license, and you would go out of business. So this is why and I have to say this because a lot of people are really trying to, like, there's, like, as much as there's a resurgence in film, there's also like a lighter resurgence in film photography, with stereo photographers, and who want to emulate and want to basically get in the good graces of making these traditional stereo cards for their inspirational heroes, the London Stereoscopic Company. And there is no way for them to do this. There's no way for you to do a photographic actual print unless you have your own darkroom equipment, unless you're actually processing your own film at home. Actually, no, you could get your film processed at a place and you just get it come back as a roll. But these require so many other skills that if you don't have a actual, like, background in film photography, if you don't have a background in actual darkroom processing, if you don't have a background in any sort of like photographic image making, there is so much investment that you're going to have to make. You're going to have to, like, invest in all this equipment, and you're also going to have to invest your time into learning all these skills that even I don't have these skills, and I've been doing it for 24 years. Like, I'm not even doing that type of stuff. I'm getting my film processed. I'm shooting with Chrome, and I'm mounting and cutting out by hand and my film into stereo slides, because that happens to be the process and the format that captured my heart. So I'm going to show you basically what types of cameras and what types of equipment that you could be using in order to get actual prints made, and that you could make at, like, a regular drugstore, like a Walgreens or something like that, which is like a drugstore chain in New York, or like Dwayne Reed. There's no more Dwayne Reed anymore, excuse me. But whatever your normal drugstore photo place is in your country, or at a professional film finishing lab, either way, if you're shooting 120 film, if you're shooting medium format, or if you're shooting 35 millimeter, I'm going to show you right now, not all of them, of course, these are just the ones that I have in my house, what you can and you cannot shoot with in order to get film processed, film scanned, because they won't even scan it, and result in you being able to get a set of photos that you can mount in a stereo card. And again, if you really do need any help with this, I will scan your film. I will definitely be able to digitize it, and I will be able to make a set of stereo cards, very luxury, beautiful editions of traditional stereo cards, and to whatever size you need, from that all the way down to like my hand-held sizes that are like little tiny mini cards, which I love so much. And I even make, like, a little tiny viewer that you can use to view them, a little magnified viewer. But anyway, I'll talk about that later. Right now, let me just talk about your options. So basically, your only real option is using, I'm saying your only real option because you could also use a half frame, but your only real option is to use a full frame camera. This is not a full frame camera. This is a 5 perf. This results in a frame that is 5 perforations wide. on a 35mm roll of film. Let me show you examples of cameras that you could use. Basically, you can use any full frame camera or 3/4 frame camera. There's a difference. This is a point and shoot Olympus. This, I believe, does not take a full frame. This will take a 3/4 frame, but a regular photo processing place will give you prints from this in like any size print that you want, like a 3x4 or like a 5x7, 4x6, etc. And you could take these prints and you can mount them and you could cut them out by hand and you can make yourself a traditional a traditional stereo card. And the reason why it's so important is because you won't get any printing artifacts that you would get, like little dots, and you'll see the little dots. It'll look like a Monet, which I think is kind of cool anyway. But you will not be able to get any type of photo really processed. You will not be able to get a photo developed and printed unless you have a full frame or a very specific type of half frame camera. So these are the types of cameras that you can use. You can use a 3/4 frame camera that will result in a full print. And it depends on the orientation when you take it. You could either take it in portrait view or you could take it in landscape view. And that results in two different types of viewing methods also. And I'll talk about that at the end. But at least just so you know what types of cameras that you can use. This is called a beam splitter. And a beam splitter has been around since basically kind of, I don't want to say the dawn of stereoscopy, but basically at a certain point, people have learned that you are able to split the image through a series of mirrors, through a series of prisms, and it will result in a single full frame being split in half. So there are a lot of different options. This one is a Lareo. I use a, this is actually a digital camera. This is actually a camera, like a Canon EOS. I think this is, what is this? This is my T5. That's as much as I went up. But this results in, a full frame image split in half. So it gives you two portrait results on one full frame landscape. This has been around for a while. This is a stereo talk. I actually do not have the camera for this. I need like a 50mm. Like I maybe I do, but I just don't. I just didn't find it right now. And so basically, this is a beam splitter, and what this does is it splits. You can see right now. Look at me. I have two lips. Blah blah blah. I could talk twice as much. Everybody's nightmare. So this will split the image that you are looking at in a full frame or like a 3/4 frame camera in half. So it will result in two images that are going to be on one regular normal full frame or 3/4 frame image, and any photo processing place will absolutely develop and scan and result in prints. If you're using just one camera, like I was showing you before, you would be able to make a cha-cha, right? And if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you know what a cha-cha is. That's when you basically take one image and one image. If you could see that all these cameras have at least two lenses like that. So that's basically making two images. And it's called a cha-cha because you're kind of doing a cha-cha step between you're taking of one image and you're taking of another image. And that basically relies on your subject matter to be still. So it's good for still lives. It's good for like a nice, quiet, non-windy day outside. And you can absolutely cha-cha with a full frame film camera. Other options that you might have for full frame images is, of course, a twin rig. And a twin rig, and this, by the way, oh my goodness, let me tell you something. I'm a lucky girl. This, by the way, this amazingly enough, I had to have somebody come over my house and like explain, oh my God, that's how you do that. So this is something that is basically going to take two cameras that are full frame cameras. These are Ricoh AF40s. And this is a very nice camera, actually. They're very, the lens is nice. They're very iffy right now because the plastic is like kind of disintegrating. And if you kind of like nick it on the side, like, you know, you might nick a piece of plastic off. But basically, this is something that is this is a full frame camera that is oriented in the portrait style mode. So it's going to take 2 portrait style photographs. There is also another way to orient a landscape, another way to orient a pair of twin rigged cameras, and this is in the landscape mode. This is the same exact pair of cameras. This is the Ricoh AF40 again, and this is oriented in the landscape mode. And the way that you fire this is it's my most favorite like twin rig ever, and it just basically depresses with like somebody made like out of a drawer handle. It's a fucking ingenious design. And so these cameras that I just showed you are all full frame cameras that are either themselves just the camera alone, like I showed you with this. You could take a cha-cha, take 2 images. You can twin rig your cameras in a variety of different ways. You can use a twin shutter release camera. You can use basically something like this, which is a twin rig, and this will basically, and by the way, this is the way you hold it so that the flash is on top. You never want to hold it, the flash is on bottom. And I'm not going to take the lenses off because it will fire, but basically, like, you know, it has, they're both made by the same person. It's one of the fucking most gorgeous twin rigs. I'll talk about this at another time, but this would be a twin rig situation. And even in modern day situations, I've seen people that are making VR videos, and they'll orient their cameras in this sort of fashion. Or you can use a beam splitter, which will be something that will it'll be a lens or an auxiliary lens. This replaces all lenses. This actually goes straight to the body. These lenses, such as this, such as a stereotac. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the viewer. And these require different sorts of viewing methods, by the way, which I will also be covering right now. But so the stereotalk viewer, this was actually made to make stereo slides out of, and this actually comes with a stereo slide viewer that you would pop a slide in, and you would view with to your eyes, and it would basically, it just basically cuts the image plane in half. But the lens adapter for that actually goes onto the camera lens itself, so you don't put it on the base of the camera. You actually put it on whatever your photographic lens for the camera is, and it just basically it has a set of mirrors in it that will basically split the image into 2 image halves, and it will result in a side-by-side image that is a portrait style, that is a landscape style divided into 2 portrait halves. There is also, by the way, a type of beam splitter, that will not, excuse me. This is the thing about, you know, using the same, I've used this lens for very heavily for about how many years straight? Probably since like, I want to say like 2008 or something like that, for like 2010, just like, this was my bread and butter. There's really, this literally was my bread and butter for so many years, because I was able to shoot regular, and then I could pop off the lens, and I could put on that lens, and I could shoot stereo. But another beam splitting option, please God, where did I put it? Here we go. So as that actually split a landscape image in half, so that you would result in 2 portrait style images, there was also a beam splitter for a landscape. And this is gorgeous. I don't take this out, actually. Oh, he's beautiful. I love it. All right, I think this is a Tiffin Delta. Is this a Delta? Tiffin Delta? Ooh, excuse me. Hold on a second. Let me just make sure that I got the information back in there. So this is a Tiffin lens, and let me just view the Jet Age photo service. Look at this. You always want to keep as much paperwork as you can. But this is basically a landscape, up and down beam splitter. So instead of splitting a full frame image and half it in half again, it splits it in half lengthwise. It splits it into landscape style. And I don't know if I could show you, but like I'll try to. This basically makes a landscape image out of a full frame image, and that results in something entirely different. That results in an image that I'm going to show you. And by the way, all of these are able to be mounted into stereo slides, and this is why I really kind of just like hammer in the importance of stereo slides. Not only do I personally think, and not only me, but many stereo photographers really personally think that these are like the only way to really do stereoscopic communication is through the stereo slide format. There are absolutely slide mounts for all of these styles that I want to say, and there's really no photographic options necessarily made for them, except for ones that you make yourself by mounting stereo cards, or by making printouts such as these. And this is by a man called Benjamin Lord, which I picked up at a very nice thrift shop near my house. And a up and down image, this results in a pair of landscape images, which you could also make by doing a side by side cha-cha. That is, instead of holding it in a portrait view, which will be holding it in a landscape view, which would be much like the camera that I just showed you, the twin rig that had the stereo pair that I did with the drawer pull. And so these images are landscape, and these are up and down, and this requires a completely different type of viewer. This requires a up and down viewer, an up and down print viewer, which looks like this. And pardon me for having this in the package, and the package being all yellowed like that, but this would be an up and down viewer. So basically you look through the pair of viewers, and it will give you a reflection of the top image and the reflection of the bottom image, which results in a stereo image, the exact same way that you would look in a traditional stereo viewer, which has, instead of like up and down, it has side-by-side lenses, and it'll result in you're being able to look at a stereo card. So that is also a stereo printout, a stereo type of card, I want to say. That's not in the traditional sense. And the way that this works, I'm just going to show you a half of one. But basically, you see that? I have my hand down on the bottom. You just put my two fingers right here. And you can see that this is like this. And if I turn it upside down, this will be like this. And so you would get a stereo image. Another full frame camera, which is something that is usually outside of anybody's price range. It's a very big collectible, and it's like touted as one of the best stereo cameras, full frames. This is an RBT. By the way, if you do have an RBT, rule number one is as soon as you get home, pop the battery grip out, because these things have such a leakage of battery juice that just like flows out, and you're just gonna like corrode the inside of your grip, your battery grip, and you're not gonna like it afterwards. Nobody likes that. And this actually takes full frame twin images per, like basically it shoots 8 frames and 8 frames. And RBT is actually in the, I want to say, the outside parameter realm of the stereo, excuse me. Let me just put this back for a second. The stereo realist standard, the 5 standard, and this is another important factor that nobody mentions, is that all these basically the stereo slide was a standard. It was the only standard that was ever passed for stereo photography. It is ISO, I want to say, what is it, 515? Yes. ISO 515. It says the recommendation was in 1947, but in reality, It was the exact year that ISO came out. Basically, the International Organization for Standardization, and that was introduced with a slew of photography standards that were basically grandfathered in, so to say, when the ISO was initially introduced, and they have parameters for basically the 5-perf stereo format that was dictated, and that was an international standard, so it applied no matter where you were in the world. And this was, I think, redacted in 1971, but there's a few of them that got revised in 1947, 1963, I think, and then I think it was redacted in 1971. But this RBT that I just showed you, I believe, was only introduced after these standards were redacted, but it still adhered to the outside dimensions, and this format not only dictated like what the 5-perf format was going to be, and this is why this is so important. When this ISO was when this ISO standard was basically passed, this it really only pertained to a slide film. It's a chrome film, and when I say that there were no capabilities of any photo finishing company to provide you with like a set of stereo pairs that were printed photographs, it was kind of like interwritten already. So there was the standard for actually like where they appeared on the on a roll of 35 millimeter. This is 35 millimeter only, 35 millimeter film. It also actually had standards for the dimensions of the stereo slides, for stereo slides that were going to be used for handheld viewing, and these were specific transparency types of viewing for handheld viewing or for projections. Nobody was projecting negatives of anything. They're projecting chrome transparencies. And so this is something to keep into consideration as to why you cannot get a fucking print made out of a traditional 5-perf camera. And if nobody is telling you that, then you're going to go into this thinking, oh, tra-la-la-la-la, I can make a stereo card out of this. And the fact is, unless somebody like me is doing that for you, unless you have somebody else as an individual person who is actually just doing this as a favor, like making their own business, like just suddenly out of it, because due to popularity, nobody's going to do this for you. No photo finishing place, no processing lab. Nobody is going to scan your film. Nobody is going to make you a photographic print out of a 5-perf format ever. They haven't been doing it ever. I mean, like in the history of it, since like not just me, not just today, not just because like, you know, film is dead and like we all saw it buried and like we all like why, like, you know, 30 years ago. It's because it never ever was an option. Just so you know, all right? But the RBT standard follows the exact outside dimensions of the stereo realist 5-perf format dimension. This is, actually that one's not an RBT, excuse me, but this is my RBT page, right? These are the exact dimensions, outside dimensions of a realist 5-perf format stereo slide dimension. That's an important thing to note, because if you had something like a 7-perf camera, like a Bush Veriscope, or a what's the Russian one, a Fed or something like that, the standards for stereo slides that they had were not, since they were not conforming to the realist format, they were not conforming, they were not able to basically take any of the realist format standards. So you see that little difference, that see how that's longer and that one's just like regular. So this is the realist one, this is the realist format one. And so the things that now then you can actually put these in a RBT. RBT actually has made many advances and many other types of standard formats, but the original Bush Veriscope or something like that, or a Fed, did not adhere to Kodachrome's basic, like, you know, a standardized format, so they will not fit in any type of realist format type of viewer. of type of specific of a projector of anything that goes along with the 5 perf format that was standardized internationally. So they are their own thing, and they will not conform to any other type of realist or 5perf standard format, and therefore you will have to buy only exclusively their proprietary viewer, their proprietary projector, and that's something that is also never mentioned. Of course, you can also, when you do use a full frame, you can absolutely use RBT types of stereo mounts, stereo slide mounts, or you can also use them as if they were an RBT or a single camera, one at a time. You can just use your regular 2x2 individual slide mounts, and these also, by the way, came in different apertures. The inside, so the outside dimension is like a dimension in itself, but the inside dimension you could see come in all different types of masking sizes, and this is something that you were able to view in a medium, a 2x2 viewer, and there are 2x2 viewers just like there are stereo viewers that I just showed you like that, and the whole entire, like, you know, basically the whole entire history of stereo viewers really are made for realist sized viewers. But you can see these are all different sorts of apertures on the inside, so you can mask different areas out if you need to adjust your window, or you can basically conform to the type of you know, if you're using a half frame camera that you were using, you could definitely take 2 half frame images, make a cha-cha. If you're using a full frame, whatever it is, and let me just make a pair that match. And so basically you could use something like a 2x2 viewer, which will take 2 2x2 slides, and you could look at them as a handheld. Or really, the reason for this is for projection, and they're usually going to be using 2 different regular 2x2 projectors that are polarized and masked off and blah 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 projected, that you can project them on screen. And so these are basically another option instead of the stereo slide specific mounting systems that you have that will just like automatically take 2 images. And there are full frame images that RBT produced, and RBT of course was this camera, this monster of a fucking Ferrari. I don't take this out by myself. I need adult supervision if I'm ever walking out of the house with this. I'm scared to take that camera out alone, and I'm not even being like, I'm not joking. I don't leave the house with that if I don't have fucking actual adult supervision with me, because who the hell knows if somebody's gonna mug me or if I'm gonna like trip and fall. But these will also have options for full frame images. They're really 7perf, but you're always going to be expected to mask a little, I want to say, on the edges. So it's always nice to have the option when you have like, you know, you can definitely mount all these full frame images that were not beam split if you're taking a cha-cha. If you are shooting either a twin rig, such as the portrait style, like this, up and down is the portrait style, and as I showed you before, there's a difference between portrait style and the landscape style, which is side by side, which you would most likely need a side by side up and down viewer. That would be a landscape view. And so these are excellent options for twin rigs like that, or for an RBT camera that shoots basically a landscape pair for each stereo shot that it takes. And to have the options of 2 specifically separate 2x2 slides that you make out of it is also, I want to say, is a preferred option for projection and not for mounting onto a stereo slide. And also they make absolutely 100% excellent variations. Not variations, but you can absolutely make photographic prints out of them. And the only one that I did not mention so far, excuse me, is the Viewmaster. Viewmaster takes 35 millimeter film. Also, this is not a full frame camera at all. And I was just mentioning this because I showed it before and I didn't speak of it now, but this is also a 35 millimeter camera, and you can't get those, you can't get anything done but your film processed in the first place. And please don't try to make prints out of it. It's going to be impossible. I'm going to stop it short right there because there's so much more to talk about, but at least I covered full frame stereo photography options that would result in your ability to get prints made, and will absolutely, ultimately, all of these cameras that I'm going to show you will absolutely result in your ability to make stereo slides out of whether they be a inherent realist format 2-frame stereo slide, or if you do a pair of 2x2 full frame images, they will result in your ability to view them one way or another, and but you will ultimately be able to get prints made out of any of the versions that I just showed you. A full frame camera, a 3/4 frame camera like a point and shoot Olympus or something like that. If you do a cha-chas with either of those, you can absolutely get prints made, and you can result in a stereo card that you can have a photographic print that you cut out yourself and mount on a card. An RBT camera, which is like the fucking Cadillac of all of them, you can absolutely result in a pair of stereo photographs that will be able to be printed at a photo lab. You can get all of these scanned, and you can result in you're making a stereo card, or because of the fact that it is a landscape type of formatted camera, that you can make a printout that will result in you being able to have a photographic print made, but you will have to view it through an up and down viewer. And you can absolutely use any full frame camera or 3/4 frame camera and get a beam splitter on it. And a beam splitter can result in either a landscape view, like the weird little that prism viewer that I showed you before. I don't feel like taking it out again, or that will split the image in half instead of this way, and it'll result in you being able to get two portrait style photographs in a landscape or a regular full frame camera. Full frame camera image that you could get a resulting photographic pair made. And these are pretty much the guaranteed cameras and camera setups and camera accessories that you could use that will take a full frame image, that will take an image from a 35 millimeter camera, or I'm not going to say 120 camera. For 120 camera, the only thing that you could really do is really do a cha-cha if you're doing it landscape or up and down, portrait style, and that will also result in you being able to get a photographic image printed and delivered to you. And those are really your only options if you want to get an actual photographic print made. I didn't get into the 120s yet. I really only got into the 35 millimeters, but that's something that everybody should know. Getting into stereo photography in the get-go, if you're buying a stereo realist camera, if you're buying something like a image tech, and I can't speak 100% on whether this will work on an Ashika or perhaps a Nimslo or another 4-frame camera that might take 2 half frames per full frame, because I've never actually gotten one developed and then scanned and processed at a place, because I've always made my own stereo slides. So I can't speak 100% on the half frame cameras. I know for a fact that you're not going to get it done on a 3-frame half frame. Oh my god, that sounds so weird saying that. You see all the different aspects involved in this. You really do need a little bit of education before getting into this. So I won't say that you can't get something processed and printed out of something like a Nimslo or Nishika, because these might actually adhere to the actual full frame formats that a regular photo finisher can actually process into a regular photographic print. Just because I haven't had it done by myself, but these two might be able to be in this whole grouping, but everything else that you're going to buy will not. So if you are trying to get into stereo film photography and you're buying something like a Viewmaster, if you're buying something like a Stereo Realist or any sort of other 5 perforation stereo cameras that came out in the 50s, 60s, or 70s-ish, you're not going to be a happy person when you find out that you can't get your film scanned, and you're going to have to scan it yourself, or you're going to have to find somebody who scans it. And by the way, hello, yes. You're not going to be a happy person if you're expecting to make photographic stereo cards with actual photo prints, which really were kind of, and it still kind of are, unless you find somebody as good as me to be printing for you, that they won't result in a image that will kind of show the print artifacts of inkjet printer or laser printer or whatever you're getting your prints printed on. That these are analog, you know, like photo prints. These are something that have basically been, you know, they've survived the test of time. These hold up under magnification, the reason is because the analog print format, unless you're using, like, you know, like, unless you're blowing it up to like 1,000,000%, and you see stuff like the film grain, even the film grain on something like that is like so microscopic that it's never going to show under magnification under normal viewing conditions, magnified viewing conditions, with like such as a traditional stereoscope, which is why photographic prints on stereo cards are just such so enormously different, black and white, I want to say, compared to something like a digital a modern day print that you might do and might not have luck succeeding at, no matter how hard you try or whatever. You need somebody with years of experience, who knows how to print, who has the proper equipment, who knows the right techniques, and who is able to basically deliver to you something that will hold up under magnification like a traditional photographic print. So that's what I have to say about that. Those are the realities of the situation. If you're buying any sort of stereo camera with the intention of making a photographic print, good luck. That's all I'm going to say. If you are buying a stereo camera with the intention of making what they were intended to be made for, a traditional stereo slide, then that is perfectly, absolutely, still 100% within the capabilities of anybody who is going to be attempting this. I have many videos up on my YouTube. Go look for them. That will show you the how absolutely easy and really just easy and fast it is to make stereo slides. And of course, this requires an additional investment of getting stereo slide mounts, of learning how to basically mount, the process involved, and the very little equipment that you really need. I personally have used scissors like pretty much my whole entire life of mounting stereo slides. I've since gotten on to like doing like a film cutter. You don't even need one of those. You can do it with scissors, absolutely. And these are things that people really aren't aware of, that you really do need to know, because otherwise you're going to be wasting your money, and you're going to be very disappointed stereographer that you have not been able to make the thing that you wanted to make the most, which might be a stereo card. And these are your options. That's what we have right now. And if anybody needs any help, if anybody needs any services provided, I'm providing services for all these things. And please email me at thelaststereographer@gmail.com. And I'm not putting prices up because it's on a per project basis. And that's it. And good luck to everybody. And I hope I've been able to at least clear things up. And I'm going to continue on this in a second, but I'm going to eat lunch first. So that's it. And I'll talk to everybody later. Bye.